So today I'm joined by Jay Haddow, who's currently over in Hong Kong as a professional footballer. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. So go on then. Tell us about your earliest days growing up playing football, because I believe, although you spent a bit of time in England, you started over your journey in Hong Kong.
That's right. Yes. When I was born in Hong Kong, and I spent my first 12 years here in Hong Kong, growing up in this really interesting city. I lived out on the islands, so was away from the city. But ever since I was younger, always had a ball at my feet, and my mum and dad was always very supportive of my football from a very young age.
What's Hong Kong like then for football? Because obviously we in England we don't hear too much about what goes on in Asia, and it's a bit of a shame because I speak to so many players from Asia, so many coaches who have some great stories. So what's Hong Kong like?
For football, I mean, Hong Kong back in the 80s and 90s was really, really big. They were attracting big names over from Europe, over from the UK. There was a lot of money put into it. Unfortunately, over the last maybe 15, 20 years, Hong Kong football has been on a decline. However, there are exciting times ahead. Um, there just needs to be more firmer plans put in place. But definitely the potential is here in Hong Kong for it to be back like it was back in the 80s and 90s.
So primary years and also in your early secondary years as well, you were spending your time in Hong Kong. Was football always involved in your life? And if so, what were you doing academy wise?
Yeah, football for me, ever since I was 2 or 3 years old, was my life. My dad's obviously a huge football fan, and like I said, he had a real passion for football, and so did I from a very very young age. Ever since I can remember, I was training literally every single day after school. Local teams over here. When I was 9 years old, I made the biggest kind of change in my or sacrifice in my career at that time, where I left my local team on the islands where all my friends were, and I joined the academy of the biggest team in Hong Kong, which actually happens to be the team I rejoined last summer. They had a proper academy set up, which was training 3 or 4 times a week in the evenings, and also entering some of the biggest youth leagues in Hong Kong. And it was a proper academy setup, and I made the sacrifice to go there, and that was one of the best decisions I made because obviously growing up in an expat society in Hong Kong, that's where I grew up. A place called Discovery Bay is heavily expat community. Leaving my school, which was an English-speaking international school, and joining a local club where predominantly was local players and Cantonese is the language over here, was obviously quite a big change for an 8, 9 year old. But that change was really, really important for me, and I really progressed.
And then your parents, I suppose, or you as well, would have been probably involved in the discussions to move back to England at the age of 12, which I suppose is a big deal at 12 years of age because you're growing, you're doing all sorts of things in your life, and you're really starting to enter a very difficult but also challenging and amazing period as well. So, what was it like then to come back to England? Which, by the way, if people don't know, is on the other side of the world.
So the story goes, I was playing football in Hong Kong, and as a kid, I was doing quite well. I was very lucky that obviously I was holding a British passport. So there was always opportunities to potentially go to the UK. And if there was ever any chance of joining an academy, I wouldn't have the problem of having to wait for the international clearance or kind of those FIFA eligibility rules, which allow foreign players. So I had a British passport, which helped me. So I had an opportunity to move to a football boarding school in Lancashire, UK, and they had ties with Blackburn Rovers. And initially, this would have been February of 2016. I went there for a 1 week taster week, and I really, really enjoyed it. I was very new to the UK. I didn't go to the UK till I was about 9 or 10, and hadn't really spent much time there. And that was only in the summer that I went, so I never experienced the UK winter before actually moving over there. But really, really enjoyed it, and made the decision to move over starting from September 2016 to this boarding school. And obviously, it was a big change for me, 12 years old and moving to the other side of the world to boarding school. But obviously, I was very, very committed and really more excited than anything. And of course, my parents were extremely supportive of me and just wanted the best for me.
So, was the decision to move to England made purely on football decisions, or was it just like you were going to do it anyway?
It was football. It was football. If I wasn't playing football, then I probably wouldn't have never moved to the UK.
Oh wow.
It was purely to help my football career. A lot of my old coaches here in Hong Kong would tell me that if I really wanted to progress my development, I'd have to move to the UK. That was the best opportunity for me to go over there and give it a shot while I was still young. And I feel like 12, 13 years old is about a good age to move over there, to keep developing and then to try find academy clubs.
So in 2016, you joined Blackburn Rovers, as you mentioned, and then you signed a 2-year scholarship in July of 2020. So is there a difference between a scholarship years and also the years prior when you're just in the academy? Is obviously football's taken more seriously, but do they put more time and effort into you?
Yeah, that's right. So from I joined from the start of under 13. So from 13s to 16s was obviously I'm still at school every day. And in the evenings, it would have been 3 nights of the week that we'd be training at the club, an hour and a half, 2 hours a night. And one day a week would be something called a day release program where you're spending the whole day at the club and you're basically living a professional day. Uh, and that is really important because it gears the young aspiring players up for what it's like. And the day release program was really set on this is what it's like every single day as a professional footballer. So, these are what we expect, and these are how you'll be training. And the it was obviously more physical day because we'd sometimes be training once or twice in that day, including gym and also having video meetings as well. So we were really experiencing the life of a professional footballer from a young age, and that was really important.
And do Blackburn, are they the only club that do that, or do a lot of clubs do that as well?
No, every club would do that. As far as I'm aware, every Category 1 and Category 2 academy will have that. That really gears you up until under 16s. And obviously, in under 16s is the year 11 age. So that's when you sit your GCSEs. Unfortunately for myself, my year 11 was the year of COVID-19. So my start of my under 18s was kind of ruined because we were in later, the season started later, and we had 4 or 5 months of minimal football. So of course catching up on that, and I had a really bad hip injury over that time too. So it was 4 months of nothing, no exercise, and that was quite a tough transition into under 18s. And from under 18s, you're training every single day. You're living a full time program scholarship. It's a full time program. You're living on site. And that also is the next stage of gearing you up for what professional football is like.
I suppose COVID would have been very challenging, obviously for everyone. But I suppose in the eyes of yourself, when you are seeing the Blackburn like first team players playing, because obviously I don't know, I don't quite remember when, but they all came back at a certain time, and I suppose all the academy players and just ordinary people didn't get the opportunity to still go and play some football. So am I right in saying that the first team players were all playing and you were sitting at home still?
Well, that's right. I mean, that first year was really challenging, the season 2020 to 2021. If I remember right, there was maybe 2 times over the season where there was like a national lockdown as well. However, professional football was still allowed to be continued as long as they followed the protocol. So we would be sent home, but the professionals would still be able to train, and us under 18s would have to stay at home. But of course, I mean, in that case, it was obviously understandable. The professionals obviously took the priority. And obviously with them having the training center, having too many people there obviously was breaking protocol. So of course the first team took priority in that case.
Under 18s, 40 appearances, and obviously under 23s would have probably been COVID years. You made 12 appearances in all competitions. So I suppose over the course of those few seasons, you're playing a lot of football. And obviously, for a player who's come from a different country, I think that's a great feat to have, because obviously it couldn't have not worked out. Sometimes it could have worked out, and then in another life, it may have not.
No, definitely. I mean, one thing that I didn't mention was actually in my under 16 year, my year 11, my family actually moved over from the UK. My mom, my dad, and my younger brother. So them moving over at that time was always kind of planned to support me in my exams, as well as supporting me in my transition to becoming a full-time scholar um, at Blackburn Rovers. So that really helped me kind of get through, or kind of giving me even 10, 20% more because I had their support there and not, 7,000 miles away and, 8 hours difference. And that really, really helped me.
So who are you with in England? Were you with like other family, or was it just you?
No, well, I was in boarding school until the end of year 10. And then at the start of year 11, family moved over. So we just went and lived with them and did my final year of school there. And then the next 2 years with under 18s was living on site. And then the following 2 years as a professional was back at home.
So could you talk to us about July of 2022 when you signed your professional contract, a 2-year option with an option for another 12 months?
So the story with that is quite interesting because I've always said like that summer was a very, I don't want to use the word stressful, but a very hectic summer for myself. Um, at the end of my second year as an under 18, I had stopped playing for the under 21s as they had brought in an older player for the under 21s who was really for the first team. But they had brought it in, so that limited my opportunities of getting under 21s football. Basically, at the end of my under 18s, I was kind of looking ahead at my time at Blackburn and thinking, well, is there much pathway for me to go forward at Blackburn? And unfortunately, I couldn't really see much pathway for myself. You know, my position was quite stacked. They just signed a new player, and really, I thought would be very difficult for me to progress forward. Um, I can say also that maybe at times I wasn't treated as well as I kind of deserved, which ultimately led me to try and find other clubs in that time. Um, there was Sunderland and there was Nottingham Forest who were really interested in signing myself. Um, but of course, with yourself being under 21 or under 23 years old, you're protected by the compensation rule. So obviously, it wasn't a very straightforward process. Um, the May of 2022 is when I got called up for the under 19 Japan national team, and that was a really fantastic opportunity for myself. And I ended up coming back, and after about 2 weeks into the season, I ended up signing my contract at Blackburn. Although there was interest from other clubs, it just wasn't possible for me to get out at that time, and I had to sign at Blackburn.
Could you explain what the compensation rule is, please?
So it's a training compensation, and the clubs very rightly are protected by the training compensation. So it's more so protecting the smaller clubs from the bigger clubs when the bigger clubs are potentially buying the smaller clubs' assets, as in players, for very low cost, even though that smaller club has invested a lot of money into that player in training and development. I remember seeing a story a couple of years ago of like a Port Vale player, obviously Port Vale playing in League Two, and Manchester City had signed a Port Vale player, and I think that the fee was about £10,000, which is very minimal and nothing for a League Two club for a player that they had developed for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know how long it was. So as a Category 1 academy player, which I was at Blackburn, with them having Category 1 status, your I guess value goes up every year more than it would as a Category 2 or Category 3 academy. And I believe my compensation fee after spending, it would have been about 5 years at the club, was about £300,000,
Wow.
which is quite a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. So could you explain to us about Japan under 19? Because obviously later on in your career, I believe you're definitely deciding what eligibility you want to pick. Because obviously you can pick England, Hong Kong, and Japan. And
So
Scotland as
yeah,
well, I believe.
and Scotland as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right. That's right. So I mean, my first ever international taste was with the Scotland. It was like every other Friday evening we'd have training sessions, and it was like a regional camp type of thing. And obviously, in my area, the northwest of the UK, you'd have clubs like Manchester United, Liverpool, Everton, Man City, obviously Blackburn Rovers, Burnley, and there was players who could represent Scotland from all those clubs, and they were all training on this Friday, every other Friday evening at this local centre. So that was really good. Unfortunately, I never really got any opportunities with Scotland. I went up a few times to the training facility there, which is really impressive, and had a few, regional tournaments they would put on, and you'd be put on a team, and you'd be able to play with other Scottish academy players playing, which was really good experience for me. But in 2022, I got contacted by the Japan Football Association about an upcoming tournament, the Toulon tournament in France, which was taking place in May 2022. And obviously that was very exciting for me. And getting called up is definitely one of the proudest moments of my career so far. And the tournament itself and the experience was really good. The level was really high. But from the coaching to the teammates, everything was really good. And I learned so much on those 2.5 week camp.
And where was the camp?
So the camp was in the south of France.
Okay.
So it's changed name now, but it's a really prestigious tournament called the Toulon tournament. And over the years, obviously, international teams have played there. And I think if you look at Toulon tournament's history, I think there has been some really, really famous players who have played in that tournament. So obviously, knowing that it wasn't just an ordinary training camp and it was actually for a tournament was, making the experience even more special.
How did you get contacted then? I'm really curious to know because obviously Japan or England or any other national team have to scout quite well to find players for all of their divisional ranks. So how did you actually get scouted and who scouted you?
So I think obviously a country like Japan, with also the last maybe 5 or 6 years, there's been more players from Japan playing in Europe, especially the UK. So they do have regional based staff or scouts or recruitment staff. I don't know what you would call them, who are based in Europe. There isn't one based in the UK, but there's one based in Spain and Germany, and one more country in Europe. And I think they're tasked with basically finding eligible players for Japan or looking after the Japanese players who are playing in Europe and sending in scouting reports. They had contacted us and they told us that for one of my upcoming games as an under 18, they would come watch. So obviously that was a very, very nerve-wracking game for myself. And obviously I must have impressed in the game and the feedback was pretty positive. And sure enough, there was a further message after saying that they would like to invite me for the upcoming tournament.
In the 18th of May, 2024, Blackburn confirmed that you would be parting ways with each other. Before that went out on social media, they obviously had a conversation with you. They probably, I'm going to guess they pulled you into like a meeting room and you had a meeting with them. But what actually happened, and was it an easy decision to go?
So what I will say is the way my time at Blackburn ended does not reflect the whole time I was there. I had some fantastic memories at Blackburn. I'm very, very grateful for the way that they obviously took me in as 12 years old, moving to the other side of the world. I'm still very young and naive, and they took me in and they developed me, and I'm the player I am thanks to them. A lot of it is thanks to them. However, my 2 years as a professional there was overall extremely frustrating and quite disappointing. Um, I won't go into so much detail, but I can clearly say that a group of us under 21s was treated very, very badly by the club, and you know for not much for no reason whatsoever. We were just there and we were treated like really training players. I still played quite a bit. In my first season was full of injuries. My second season, I still played quite a bit, but there was never a pathway for me to move into the first team. I'd occasionally train with the first team, but really a lot of it was just to train and training numbers, which obviously for myself, I looked at as an experience to still get better. Um, I was still always playing. I was always in the team sheet, but there was never a pathway for me to go forward. I had actually asked to terminate my contract in the summer of 2023 because for those reasons, I wasn't happy with the way I was being treated, and also I didn't see a pathway for myself. Um, they did not also help with loan moves. I was quite eager to get out on loan if I didn't see a pathway there, and I knew that I would like to end my contract when it finishes. I was pushing for a loan move in which they weren't very, very helpful. I think Blackburn, a club who struggles financially, were obviously looking for their players, the clubs that the players were potentially going to pay a hefty percentage of their salary, as opposed to the same teams in our league like Manchester United and Manchester City in the under 21 Premier League, who might only ask for 10 to 20%, whereas Blackburn were asking for maybe up to 80 to 90% of our salary covered, which for some of these smaller clubs for a young player on loan was really impossible. They weren't gonna fork out that amount of money for a young, inexperienced player who they didn't know, you know, they didn't know what could they bring to the team as a young, inexperienced player. So the whole season was very, very frustrating. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about obviously having questions earlier. I called it. I knew that the 2 years would be really, really tough, but because of the training compensation, the club was protected, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to leave earlier. Obviously, it's very easy to look at hindsight. I regret those last 2 years signing, but of course, things happen for a reason. And I still stayed very professional throughout the whole time. I did everything I can to stay fit, stay sharp, gain any valuable knowledge and experience that I could get. Like I said, I still played a lot of the games, which was really, really good. But was just treated quite unfairly and poorly by some of the senior academy and senior first team staff. But my coaches, my under 18s, my under 21s coaches were fantastic with me throughout. I'm very, very grateful for them. They looked after me really, really well. And I'm still in contact to them now.
So when you signed that contract deal in 2024, no, in 2022, sorry, 2022.
That's right.
Going back into this after you wanted to terminate it in 23, and then still having to come back in 24. What was that like to come back into 24? Was it a bit of
It was
a
tough.
a nerve-wracking
It,
task?
it wasn't nerve wracking. I mean, I just accepted to myself everything I just said there. I said to myself, look, it is what it is. I'm gonna stay professional. I'm gonna get everything I can out of it because there's still plenty to learn, and I did last season. Although I wasn't given a fair opportunity, there was still plenty to learn, and I just stayed professional. I made sure I did everything right on and off the pitch, and but of course, it was a very very tough time for myself. I was very very worried at times. Sometimes we would be driving home after training and then be really really emotional. Because I just thought, this is really unfair. Not getting these opportunities, and of course seeing your teammates and friends getting opportunities and you don't, is obviously very very tough. But the best thing about it was my coaches and my teammates were very very supportive of me the whole time, and leads back to your earlier question about how the conversations went. It went exactly how I wanted it to. I was actually nervous going into the conversation because I was praying that they don't renew my contract. And for me to be saying that 10 years ago, I'd have thought, you're crazy. Why are you saying things like that? But this valuable experience really taught me so much about football, and also life as well. It's not fair, but you don't complain. You just get on with it, and like I said, you do everything you can to take as much out of it as you can, and keep developing because that's the thing. I still have loads to develop on, and still need to gain loads and loads of experience. So I just took it as a year of development experience, and then was preparing for the following season outside of Blackburn.
Well, you went to Hong Kong, and obviously that is again, you've gone back home. Could you just explain to us before we explain about your own time in Hong Kong, how the leagues work? Because obviously in England, we all know how it works.
The Hong Kong leagues.
Yes, please, yeah.
So the Hong Kong League runs obviously the same schedule as the English leagues. It's from August to May roughly, and the thing about Hong Kong football is financially, um, it has taken, like I said, a bit of a decline in the last few years. There are only 9 clubs in the 9 teams in the league this season, which is quite low. Usually they have always had 10, 11, 12 teams. Um, the season before the one that's just finished, there was 2 teams at the end of the season who had to withdraw from the league. Also, there's no relegation because the way it works here is if you have enough money to stay in the league over the season, then you can stay. That's how it works over here. So it is quite unique. Like I said, the league itself has so much potential. There are some great teams here. There's some great players here, and it has lots and lots of potential. It just needs the right plan ahead, if that makes sense. The national team have been doing really well. They've got an English manager in, and the results have been good, which is also good for Hong Kong. Um, but yeah, definitely the league could do with improving. But definitely, like I said, there's potential there, and there is money in Hong Kong to fund the league. They just need to find the right people to guide them in the right way. And for sure, this league can be what it was back like in 80s and 90s.
And in terms of this season just gone, I know that you played Atletico Madrid, so that would have been just prior to the season starting. What was that like to play Atletico Madrid in a friendly match?
Well, when people ask me that question, I always say I went from April, leaving Blackburn in April. Obviously, feeling not great. Glad that I left, but obviously not great about myself. Was quite low in confidence after the season I just had. Was quite frustrated with football. At times, that season I did kind of fall out of love with football. I didn't want to go and train sometimes, but like I said, my head and brain pushed me forward. Because I was knowing that I'm going to try and get as much out of it. So I went from that state in April to about 3.5 months later, walking out at Hong Kong Stadium in front of 20,000 fans playing against Atletico Madrid, feeling fantastic, you know? So that shows to people, football can be up and then immediately can go down. Things can happen. And I was obviously extremely grateful for that opportunity. What a fantastic, memory that will be for a lifetime, and hopefully can get more opportunities like that in the future.
What was it like to sign your professional deal in Hong Kong? Because obviously you would have had to go all the way over there. And did you go over there knowing you'd sign a contract, or were you just going back there to go back home?
So obviously, the club that I'm currently at is the club that I was at as an academy player for 3 years, in the nines to 12s, before I moved to the UK. In that time, I kept in really good touch with the a lot of the key staff at Kitchee. The owner was obviously very, very supportive of me while I was in the UK, and some of the other key staff as well. They were obviously always watching my development, and of course, because I was technically a Kitchee Academy graduate, playing in the UK, and I believe I was the only one from Kitchee, playing in the UK. Um, so obviously there was eyes on me, and when and definitely in my older, since I signed my scholarship and professional contract, there was a lot of talk in Hong Kong about myself and people following my journey, knowing that I could potentially represent, or obtain a Hong Kong passport and then become a local player in the future. Um, when news broke out that I had ended my contract in at Blackburn, and I was basically looking for clubs, and I had said, I was open to coming back to Asia, because I believed that that was something that would be good for my kind of mental well being after a few tough years in the UK. um, I got contacted by Kitchee, and soon enough went in for a meeting with the owner, and it was a very positive meeting. And although I did have some opportunities in the summer in Japan to go and train under a few clubs, which I've always wanted to do, Kitchee was the best option for myself. And returning back to a club where I've known for a long time and been following and really really like and have supported. Um, it was a no brainer for me.
And what's it like to play football in Japan now, living the professional life? Obviously, still Blackburn counts as well, but obviously this is your first big move in professional football.
In Hong Kong, yes.
Yeah.
Playing in Hong Kong, it's great. Like I said, the league is very unique, but I'm really, really enjoying my football. This season has been tough. I have had quite a few injuries, which have been annoying. Of course, they're out of my control. So I've been doing everything I can after to recover, do my rehab properly. The medical staff here are really, really great. This season has been tough for us as a team. We haven't quite achieved, our season expectations, but a club like Kitchee are always on the top of Hong Kong football. So, the pressure is on, but I have no doubt that, we'll be very, very competitive next season and in the years to come. And really, the aim for Hong Kong teams is you get two slots to play Asian Champions League football, the winner of the league and the winner of the Hong Kong FA Cup. And for any club in Hong Kong, that's really the main target, is to be able to play Asian Champions League, because you're able to play against the best teams in Asia, home and away, 6 games. And that really is the pinnacle of Asian club football. So that is a big target for myself personally, and of course the club will always want to qualify for the Asian Champions League. Unfortunately, this season we didn't quite qualify, so next season there isn't continental football. But the season after, that is the target for all the players. We want to be playing in the Champions League.
What do you want to do now internationally? Because obviously you have expressed interest in Hong Kong, you've expressed interest by playing for Japan. I suppose England and Scotland haven't really been spoken about yet.
So yeah, I've made my decision. I'm in the current process of obtaining my Hong Kong passport. With that, unfortunately, I've had to renounce my British and Japanese passport, which wasn't an easy decision. But being here for 1 year, and seeing the opportunities that I could get potentially by becoming a local player in Hong Kong, you have, or in a lot of Asian countries, you have a foreign player quota, and in Hong Kong you can play 6 foreigners on the pitch at once, and you can have 1 foreigner on the bench. There's a total of 7 foreigners who can be in the matchday squad, but there's unlimited registrations. So this season at Kitchee, myself playing as a foreigner, because I haven't quite obtained my Hong Kong passport yet. Um, we've had 10 to 11 foreigners this season in the whole squad, which means that 2 or 3, barring some injuries, have had to miss out every match day. And although I think it's great how it's very competitive, of course, sometimes being a defender, maybe you're not the most prioritized position on the pitch. If you're playing at like a front three of foreigners and you got midfield and centre back as being a right-sided fullback, or a bit of a kind of a utility player along the back in the midfield, sometimes you're not as prioritized. However, I've still played when I have been fit. I've played here, which has been good. Although the injuries have been a little bit annoying. And hard to deal with at times. But being in Hong Kong, it's great for my mental well being. I have a lot of my friends here, and a lot of things to do. My father owns a football youth academy here in Hong Kong, so I've been involved in that a lot as well, which I've been really enjoying. It's a big passion of mine. Um, so there's a lot of things to keep yourself occupied here, which is good. So I have applied for the Hong Kong passport. I'm currently waiting for that to arrive, and hopefully by the start of next season, I can become a local player, so I don't have to worry about foreigner quota registration rules.
But also representing Hong Kong, do you think that's a really feasible target within the next 2 or 3 years? And if so, what are they doing in terms of battling it out for the World Cup and Asian? Is it the Asian Cup as well?
Yeah, the Asian Cup, that's right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I haven't given so much thought to the national team. I mean, for sure, my priority right now is the club because that's where I'm at. Every single day I'm training at the club, and we got games literally every weekend. That's my main priority. The way I see it is if I do well and if I keep improving and developing, then hopefully there could be international opportunities. I'm still 21, so there's potential opportunities to be playing in the under 23s Asian Cup qualifiers at some point, which is something that I can definitely target. Um, but really, it depends when my passport arrives. I've been waiting a while and really hopeful that it can arrive before August next season, or before preseason, because actually right now I'm currently without a passport, so I'm not able to travel anywhere. So hopefully that can arrive before preseason, so I can go away on training camp.
And what would be the expectation for yourself for next season for the club, but also on a personal level as well?
Look, I mean, with the way it went in the UK and the unpredictability of football, I don't necessarily like long-term goals, because as I've clearly explained, things can change in football like a flash. The nature of football, you can get injured tomorrow and miss the whole of the next season. That's how tough this industry is. Or you could have a fantastic season and play every game, and a huge club from Asia might be in for you. Like that. There's different that's what makes football so unpredictable. Uh, for myself for next season, I just want to play as much as I can. I want to stay as fit the whole time. I want to stay injury free as best I can, and just be able to help the team. I want to just play, and of course, like I said, we have team targets, which is always to win the league. That's always the target of Kitchee, and to be very dominant in all of the cup competitions, um, as well as qualify for the Asian Champions League. So those are the team targets. They're always the same, which is great because there's pressure put on us, but it shows that this club is very ambitious, which is what you want and where you want to be playing. Um, but for personal goals, like I said, I just want to play as much as I can and help the team and hopefully achieve all our team targets.
Well, Jay, I wish you all the best in that. Thank you very much for joining me today. And again, all the best for next season and beyond.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.